Good morning, LinkedIn Live. I am super excited to be back this Friday, the 11th, and I got another lady boss. She's just straight fire. I mean, we have so much to talk about over the next 30 minutes. I'm really excited to have Laura Gassner Otting, LGO.
This is why I'm called LGO, because everyone gets my name wrong. You've just uncovered the secret to my personal branding. I did the Today Show, and Jenna Bush was like, "We have Laura Gassner Otter," and my kids from then on were like, we're just going to call you Grass-Fed Otter from now on." So that's why I'm LGO, because Laura Gassner Otting is a lot of name, and everybody gets it wrong. It's tough.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, so great job, Rachel. So we're just kicking it right off, okay, LGO? Okay, now that was part of the original question was where did LGO come from? So talk a little bit more about that, and let's hear a bit about your journey and how the heck you became such a kick-ass keynote speaker, motivational speaker, entrepreneur, author. I mean, all the things.
Yeah, well, I mean, when I was in high school, I had a best friend who used to call me LG. My name was Laura Gassner. LG, like he would see me at the end of the hallway, and he was like 6'2" in 10th grade, and he'd be like LG. And I don't know, when I got married, I had already worked in the White House as Laura Gassner, so it was sort of weird to like drop Gassner and become Laura Otting. Like, who the hell's Laura Otting? I have a pretty like horse-sized Rolodex of people who were kind of cool who know me as Laura Gassner. So I don't want to get rid of that, but I didn't want to hyphenate, and I didn't want to figure all those things. And I wanted my kids to be, Otting, and I wanted to be Mrs. Otting when I went to put the dry cleaning and the kids and all those things. So I just made Gassner my middle name. So it's Laura Gassner Otting. There's no hyphens. My, people who know me through like school know me as Laura Otting. Fine, no worries. People who know me through work know me as Laura Gassner Otting. Cool, no worries. But when I had to start signing my name on things, I was like, that is a lot of name. I mean, geez, Louise, I'm signing forever. I just signed up. I just signed a speaking contract for an audience of 5,000 people. They're ordering 2,000 books, and they want me to sign it ahead of time. If you sign Laura Gassner Otting on 2,000 books, you need to fly in a week ahead of time to do that. That's a lot of signing. So I just started doing LGO just as like a shortcut, and it just stuck. People just called me LGO. So it just felt kind of natural because I'd always been LG, and now I'm LGO, and it just is. And it's perfect. It fits me.
It is perfect. It's, the naming thing is really funny for women because for me, I'm Rachel Bronstein. And then I became Rachel Bronstein Lee, to your point, because I wanted to same thing as you.
Yep.
And now it's like this Rachel B. Lee and Joshua B. Lee. So you just never know your name when it comes to your personal brand. If you're smart about it, it can really help it be an identifier. It can help be a fun identifier.
Absolutely. And I think most, I think there are people who are super thoughtful about their personal brand. I'm not one of them. This was completely accidental, but you and I met on Clubhouse, and when it came time to put my name in on Clubhouse, it was just going to be Laura because it just shows your first name, and everybody's Laura. Like, there's a lot of Lauras out there, so what's going to set me apart? I was like, all right, I'll just put an LGO, and so it just stuck. It just became a thing, and what's fun about it is people attach themselves to brands that they feel a personal connection to. They feel ownership over. They feel like they're invested in it. And when people can call me LGO, they feel like they're my best friend. So they feel like they're in on the joke. They feel like they're part of the cool kids club. And everybody wants that feeling. So if it helps people and it's easier, and then nobody gets it wrong and nobody spells it wrong and nobody introduces me wrong on national television, I mean, I had to sit there like, as I'm watching her butchering my name on national television. But fine. Now I'm LGO. It's easy.
Yeah. Amazing. Amazing. So, I mean, LGO, you've done some pretty cool stuff, right? We work with the Clinton administration. You were a part of bringing AmeriCorps. Like, can you talk a little bit about just how you went from that side into really being a voice for the people, for being an author? Just talk a little bit about that journey because it's so compelling.
Yeah. So I dropped out of law school to join presidential campaign of somebody who was an unknown presidential candidate from a tiny southern state, Arkansas. And I was like, who? Governor who? From where? Not a chance in hell. George H.W. Bush had just won Desert Storm. He had a 91% approval rating, but he talked about this idea that inspired me. And so I dropped out of law school, joined the campaign, ended up in the White House. 4 years into that, my then boss, when I approached him and said, I want to go back out on the campaign trail, he let me know very gently that I was too old to get back on a campaign bus and eat cold pizza and sleep on high school gymnasium floors, because 25 is like in dog years for campaign, right? I was like a billion, but I was also too young to be the domestic policy advisor. So he's like, go talk to my friend Arnie Miller. He runs the biggest search firm in the country that does exclusively advocacy, nonprofit, university foundation work. He'll find you a job. You'll hide out for the next 4 years doing good stuff, and then you'll come back and do something big on the Gore campaign. And I said, great. And I sat down with Arnie, and within 5 minutes, I was like, you work in Boston, right? Like the guy I'm dating right now, who I think is the one, is he's about to move to Boston. So I should just come work for you. And he's like, you should come work for me. And I was like, great. What do you do? And that's how I became a headhunter. So I became a headhunter. I went to go work for Arnie. I worked for him for 5 years, learning from the best and the brightest about how to do this work really, really well. And then I had this moment of rage where I realized that the business model in which we were doing this really great work was actually not so great for my clients. It was really great for the huge clients for whom we were incentivized to spend most of our time, but it wasn't so great for our smaller clients that we were really incentivized to only give like the last 5% of our time because they weren't, big revenue drivers. And that just didn't work for me. I got into this work because I cared about those organizations. So I walked into his office and I was like, there's a better way. And he was like, there's the door.
Yeah.
Yeah. He basically said, you can stay here and keep doing the work the way we're doing it. You're great. We love you. Awesome. Or if you want to do it your way, you can go. And what I realized in that moment was I wasn't part of the solution for my clients. And if I wasn't part of the solution for my clients, it left me in only one place, which was that I was part of the problem for my clients. And I didn't want to be part of the problem. So I left in my sort of Jerry Maguire moment, right? And I created my own firm based on the way I thought the work should be done. And I spent 15 years building and running that firm until I eventually sold it to the team of women who helped me build it. Once I sold the firm, I had some ideas about what I wanted to do next, but not exactly what I didn't really fully know. And so I said yes to a bunch of things, one of which was chairing a charity auction for a local nonprofit. And a friend of mine who was getting up on stage doing the emceeing, thanking everybody for being involved, said, and I want to thank my dear friend Laura, who dedicates her life to philanthropy. And I was like, oh my God, she just lady who lunched me. Like, I am the lady who lunches. Like, I'm sitting here in this fancy dress with the fancy jewels that I borrowed from a friend, and I am chairing a philanthropy charity auction. What has happened to my life? Like, I'm no longer LGO CEO. Here's my card. And I went home that night and I bought lauraGassnerOtting.com and I started blogging about stuff that, I was righteously indignant about. And one of the things that I blogged about, somebody from TEDx Cambridge, which is one of the big TEDx's, outside of Big TED, saw it and said, hey, you should do this. You should do a TED Talk on this. And I said, no freaking way. I'm terrified to speak in public. I don't want to do that. That's awful. And my then 13-year-old in the back seat's like, hey, Mom, don't you tell me I have to do things that scare me?
Yeah.
And don't you tell me if it doesn't change me, it doesn't challenge me, it doesn't change me. And don't you tell me that life starts on the other side of the fear. And I was like,
oh gosh.
So I said yes. And 6 weeks later, I was on the stage. And then that talk got some attention, which then got me offers to speak on stages for money. And I was like, tell me more about this job where I fly somewhere. I talk for 45 minutes, you give me a check, and then I leave. And there's no deliverable after 20 years of consulting. And that's what brings us to today.
Wow. Talk about just like following, your heart a little bit, like what's good, where you see the opportunity. I mean, what a fantastic background. LGO, now it's making even more sense to me on the book Limitless, because holy heck, your life seems very limitless. All of what you're creating, right? I want to talk about finding your purpose, because that's a
Yes.
lot of what the book is about and a lot of what you talk about. And then we were talking before this about the Great Resignation, and there's such a big connective tissue in that. Talk about why people are caring about finding their purpose. Like, what is this whole talk?
Yeah. Yeah. So, when I was in high school and when I was in college, and this may have been the same thing for you, I sat down with a guidance counselor. And that guidance counselor gave me a list. And that list was what makes a good job good. And it had things like, are you, how much money you're going to make and how prestigious will it look on your resume? What kinds of skills will you learn? How big is the impact? What's the mission? Are you inspired by the leader? Where is it located? There were very specific things on that list. And when I became a recruiter, I used to listen for those things when I would talk to people. And if I heard like 2 of them, I was like, okay, I could maybe pull them into the boat. And if I heard 3 or 4, I was like, cool, they're hooked. If they're right for my client, I can put them in front of them. If I heard 5 or 6 or 7 of these 8 motivating factors, I was like, my job is done. I know they're set. I'm going to go move on to the next client. And I was able to build these incredible, beautiful, robust, diverse candidate pools. And then they would start to fall apart after 2 weeks and 4 weeks and 6 weeks and 8 weeks of this long, drawn out executive search. These beautiful candidate pools where I had people with, checking all the boxes were not really sticking with it because they wanted meaning. And all I was bringing them was a checklist. So that list that we get when we're talking to that guidance counselor about what makes a good job good leaves out the most important piece, us. What makes a good job good for you is going to be different than what makes a good job good for me. You take that and then you couple it with when we're 15, 16, 17 years old, that same person says, pick a path, pick a major, pick a college, pick a career, pick a trade. And you go, okay, but you know what you don't have, Rachel, when you're 15, 16, 17 years old? Frontal lobe, like the actual part of your brain that helps dictate good, sound, logical decision making. So we're making this decision that's going to affect the rest of our lives before we literally have the capacity to make a good one. So we have this list, which we just go check, 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 done. We make this path and we're like, all right, I'm on that path. And then at some point we wake up and we say, what mattered to me then doesn't matter to me now. What am I going to do? Because we have this idea that you have one purpose in life. You have a calling. And also that your purpose can only be higher or lofty if it's like going to be a legit purpose. If it's like, if your purpose is buying a Maserati and a beach house, what kind of purpose is that?
Yeah.
I think your purpose is your purpose, plain and simple. So if your purpose is buying a Maserati and a beach house, that's cool. Like if your purpose is curing cancer, that's cool too. If your purpose is everything in between, fine. Your purpose may be working a job that you don't care that much about so that you can be home every night for dinner with your kids. I don't know. It's up to you. But at every age, at every life stage, our purpose is going to be different. And this idea that we make this checklist at 15 years old and we stay on it forever is, I think, what gets us into a lot of trouble, where we wake up one day and we go, that's not my purpose.
Yeah. Oh God, yes. I relate a lot to that. I really do. And it's all of those constructs that were set up for us, not by us.
Mm-hmm.
And I love what you're talking about too, about how it can evolve. I personally feel like I'm really stepping into my purpose finally at 34. But I left my corporate job. I left that because I felt that feeling my stomach, LGO, that
Mm-hmm.
like, everything was great, great, great. But like something was missing for me in the bottom of my tummy, my soul.
Mm-hmm.
And so I want to speak into that because I am part of that, I think, great resignation. People are like having that feeling that I had. We're like, this is great, but what is happening right now? Why are people awakening? Why are people leaving jobs? Why are people going to entrepreneurship so much? Talk about your research. What's happening?
Yeah, so in January of 2019, I put together an assessment, which is at limitlessassessment.com. And it's a pretty intense assessment. It takes about 20 minutes to take. And so it's funny, in the beginning, not a lot of people took it. And I was sort of like, wah, wah, like, I don't know. But about 6 months ago, I heard some guy, one of those thought guru, leader, blowhard types talking about the Great Resignation and what's causing it. And he was like, it's all about money. We need to pay our people more. You got to pay your people more. And I sat there listening to him and I thought, that doesn't comport with 20 years of executive recruiting where I was paid on behalf of my clients to call the most successful people in the world, which sounds like a really hard job, except despite all that success, they weren't very happy, which is why they were taking my calls. I was like, it doesn't comport for me. I wish there was some data. And about 3 months ago, I looked back and I'm like, I wonder if anyone ever took that assessment. And I found out that there were almost 6,000 people who took it. So I have these 3 million bits of data across, 54 questions and 13 demographic bits of data that say that, in fact, only 1 out of 3 workers say that money is the most important factor that determines their career satisfaction. But in fact, what they're looking for is more insight, more meaning, more connection, more control, more inspiration. They want to be inspired by their leader. They want to understand how their work actually matters to the big picture. They want to sit at the table and know that their opinion matters to the people who determine the metrics of how they are judged. And they want to be inspired by their leaders. They want to see them and understand them and have personal relationships with them. And those things, by the way, are all free.
Yeah. Wow. So relationship building matters the most.
Relationship building is huge. So, a lot of people will say like, oh, we know that good leaders inspire their workers to do their best work, right? Good leaders retain their great star players. And we know that bad leaders are damaging, right? They are bad. They are terrible. They bleed out, bad staff. Somebody who says, I do not respect my leader will say only 17% of them will say they're surrounded by people that they respect and emulate. Only 34% will say that they feel like their work relates to their goals in any kind of way. Only 25% say that they feel like they can affect change that allows them to do their best work. And only 31% say they're the best versions of themselves at work. So bad leaders hire poorly, create, confusing work environments, don't give people like any agency to lead. Like, we know all these things. But what was so interesting in our research is that we learned that no matter how good leaders think they are, leaders who do not have good relationships with their teams are just as bad leaders. So if you're a good leader and your team doesn't feel like they have a good relationship with you, only 25% of them also think that they can affect change at work that allows them to be the best version of themselves. Only 30% of them think that they have any influence over the metrics by which they're judged. 36% of them say that, their work gives deeper meaning to their lives. I mean, on and on and on. And I could snow you with statistics here. But the answer is, are you a good leader or a bad leader? Okay, that's the first thing. If you're a bad leader, go fix that. If you're a good leader, do you actually have relationships? Does your team feel like they're empowered to ask for feedback? Do they have agency and influence over how they work? And do they have an understanding about why their work actually matters? And if you can't say yes to those, you got to get in there and really start working those relationships.
Those are huge questions. I was going to say, how do you know if you're a bad leader? Because like, I don't think I'm a bad leader, but what about if everybody else thinks I'm a bad leader, LGO? Like, you know what I mean? So if you ask yourself those 3 questions, is that the best place, or is it best to actually go to the team and get, third-party insight? Like, how do you figure that out?
Well, the team's not going to tell you that you suck, right? I mean, they
Right.
might. I mean, you can certainly look at you can certainly look at whether or not you've got good retention, right? So
Right.
that's obviously an easy thing to look at. But I think if you ask your team questions like, are you surrounded by people that you respect and want to emulate? Do you understand how your work relates to, the bigger picture of the company? Do you see how your work relates to your goals in some way? Do you feel like you can affect change that allows you to do more aligned work? Are you the best version of yourself at work? If you ask questions like that, or, have your team take my assessment. But if you are able to have those conversations and people tell you yes to all of those things, then you're in a pretty good place. They tell you no to them, then you have stuff to work on, and it becomes pretty clear what you need to work on. Because good leaders without relationships are basically bad leaders. So it doesn't matter if you're good or bad. They say that people don't hear what you say; they hear what they feel. And I think you need to figure out what they feel, because it doesn't really matter what you're saying; it matters how they're feeling.
Ooh, that's a big one. I love that. How are people feeling around your environment? I just want to say hello to Michelle Larson. Thank you so much, Carly Bell and Dawn. Hey, Dawn. So beautiful to have some people with us. Do write in the comments or let us know where you're in from. On the flip side of that, so fine if you're the leader. What about if you're not the leader per se, you're on the team and you're the one that's feeling the feels? You're the one that's feeling, I'm not the best version of myself here. Something's
Mm-hmm.
lacking.
Yes.
What?
Well, so sorry, go ahead.
No, no, what do we do? What's the next thing to be thinking about?
So I think it's very important to figure out what is lacking. And, I think a lot of times what happens is we go, well, I'm not happy. So let me just go to the internet. And we go to the internet and we see all kinds of things that I like to say they're like the four horsemen of the success apocalypse. We see passion, purpose, happiness, and balance, right? Like you got to follow your passion. And I think that's nonsense, right? Like following your passion just tells you that as long as you find your passion, everything's going to be perfect. But you and I both know that when you are passionate about something, you're going to create something that is going to be hard. It should be difficult. It should be challenging. It should be exciting. If you create something that's exciting, it's going to tear you apart. It's going to knock you down. It's going to be, before you get it right, you're going to have to learn a lot of lessons. But isn't your passion worth that? So I say, don't follow your passion, invest in your passion, right?
Ooh.
Do the work, have the conversations, watch the TED Talks, listen to podcasts, watch these LinkedIn lives, learn what you're doing, invest in your passion. Don't just think that the day something doesn't work, you're like, oh, I guess that must not be my passion, right? That's just like an internet trope. That's useless. Then there's balance. Work is here and life is here, and never the twain shall meet. Well, that's crazy. Like, I mean, I have a lot of social media accounts. I'm friends with people both professionally and personally on those accounts. Work and life are already they're already together. They're already interlaced. We also, a lot of us right now during COVID aren't going to the office every single day. So we don't have time to go home and code shift and costume change and all of that stuff. So we're already the same person. And so work-life balance is nonsense. We need work-life alignment. Then there's happiness, which is the like, I'll be happy when. I'll be happy when I get the job. I'll be happy when I get the promotion. I'll be happy when I get the raise. Well, that's not enough because that's just this hedonic treadmill that gives you this like quick dopamine hit. And then again, you're like, well, what have you done for me lately? What's next? What's next? What's next? You got to figure out what's going to make us happy now. And then lastly, is this idea of purpose. That purpose can only be real if it has lofty or higher in front of it. And you can only be of purpose if you're of service. And service can only mean service if you're sacrificing. So if you're not literally taking the shirt off your back and giving it to some poor kid in need, then you're just a sellout. And the truth is that every one of us is doing our work for a different reason. So if you hate your job, but it allows you to afford a lifestyle that you really want, well, then maybe that's the purpose of the job. And maybe that's okay. So I think it's understanding why we do the work at different times of our lives. And again, taking the assessment, limitlessassessment.com will help you figure that out. Though I will say, I did learn that 67 questions is very long and a lot of people can't do that. So I was like, you know what? There's 4 areas that actually allow people to find alignment and flow, what I call consonance in their life. And so you can go to my4questions.com and just take 4 quick questions. That'll tell you exactly what you need.
I love that. Exactly what we need to live a life that is purposeful, that has meaning and makes us money and gives us
Yes. But I will say, on that question of like, what if we're the ones who don't have what we need? I'm drafting an article right now for Harvard Business Review that talks about middle managers, that actually workers aged 30 to 45 are resigning in rates 20% higher in 2021 than they resigned in 2020. So they are like, the middle managers are the ones who are bleeding out of the workforce right now. And in my research, what I learned is that it's not just the dissatisfaction doesn't start at 30. It actually starts at 25. But 25 to 30-year-olds, don't have as much agency and financial ability to leave a job. And so the people who are in charge of actually understanding and communicating your culture and your ethos in your company are the ones who they themselves don't even have it. So I would really, if you are a leader, focus on the 25 to 45-year-old group. The middle managers are the ones that you're training into middle managers. And if you are in that age group, then what I've learned is that a lot of them most of them actually say they're actually being paid enough. They're able to manifest their values just fine. They're able to have the career trajectory they want. What they don't have is inspiration. They just don't have enough calling. They don't understand how their work actually matters to the big picture, so they don't have that connection. And most importantly, and especially for women, they don't have enough control. So they don't have enough agency to decide who they work with, where they work, when they work, how that work is being judged so that they can be in line for promotion. And women in particular want more control as they get older and as they move up in the workforce. No surprise, a lot of them is because that's when they're having children and their families are expanding. But women actually stall out at the middle of their career and they don't get any more. So they're constantly feeling like the pull. Is this enough? Is this not enough? Am I getting enough from work? Is it really worth it?
Yeah, you just hit on like so many things that we could talk for hours about each of those topics, LGO. I mean, I think just because we are coming in at the end and there's so much that you're talking about. And I love that thought on the middle management and how they're burning out the most. That was me kind of that whole thought. I want to speak in to those people. Like I want to speak into not the leaders, although they might watch or whatever. I want to speak into the rest of us. What would you say you're looking at your life right now and you feeling that feeling? So yes, we'll go onto your site, we'll ask the 4 questions, but like we're looking at ourselves, we're saying something's off right now. I don't feel what sort of mindset? Where do we get our head straight? Where do we go next? What is the next best step right now?
Well, what I would say is the very first thing I would say is that this feeling is completely normal. That is very important to know, right? There are literally millions of people who are waking up going, when life returns back to normal, is the life I'm returning to really the normal I want?
Yeah.
And a lot of those millions are saying no. So you are not alone. Other people are feeling this way. I will also say that I spent 20 years making a lot of money placing people in positions who were unhappy where they were. So it's not new. It's not new to the Great Resignation. These issues have been around forever. The Great Resignation has just lit a spotlight on them in ways that we've kind of ignored in the past and pushed under the rug. Lastly, the advent of the millennials, who get such a bad rap in the workforce, but who are the first generation who are actually living their lives out loud, showing who they are on social media and demanding to have those same values in their professional lives as well. Thank you to the millennials who are actually bringing this conversation about purpose and values into the workforce. So a lot of things are happening right now to come together for many of us to say, something's not right. We have all been fed this line that success is the destination, that when we get there, we'll be happy. Once you get to the corner office, you'll be happy. Sorry, Sheryl Sandberg, but lean in is nonsense. This fastest and most expedient path to the corner office is the only definition of success. I don't buy it. I say that's bananas. And I think that there are so many ways to define success. You may say, my purpose, my calling is building a business. You may say it's building the bottom line of somebody else's business because I don't want to take that risk on myself. You may say my purpose is curing cancer. You may say my purpose is nurturing a family. You may say my purpose is dropping out of the workforce and, going and living on a farm and making my own solar energy and my own food. Like, everybody has a thing that's inside of them that, man, we really want to fly that freak flag. We want to be who we are. And what I'm saying is, do it. I'm saying do it. My book is called Limitless: How to Ignore Everybody, Carve Your Own Path, and Live Your Best Life. And the most important piece of that is the how to ignore everybody part, because we are surrounded by people in our lives who are giving us advice based on their own fears. Right? We are surrounded by people in our lives who are giving us advice based on their own fears. So that friend that you run into in the coffee shop who's like, oh my God, you're going to quit your job and do what? You can't do that. That's too scary. What they really mean is, I could never do that. I'm too scared. And your parents who were saying, oh, you should really take the sensible route here. Well, the last time you lived in the same house with them, you were probably 17, 18 years old. You didn't have that frontal lobe, and you were putting empty milk cartons back in the refrigerator and leaving your dirty socks on the living room floor. They don't know what you're capable of. And the other people who look at you and they're like, I don't know, I'm not so sure. Let me pop your balloon. Let me poke holes. They're just jealous because they are defining their status in the world based on your status in the world. So if you rise, they think they fall, when in fact, there's enough success for everyone. There's enough success to go around. So the how to ignore everybody part is super important. Finding the people who know you, who believe in you, who see you, not just love you. There's a difference between being loved and being seen. The ones who see you and love you anyway, right? Those are the ones that you want to surround yourself with. And I call them your family, this combination of friends and family. Maybe it's your parents, maybe it's your friends, maybe like everyone's got a different setup. But who are the people in your life who will see you and push you and help you become that crazy, unique, quirky version of you? Those are the ones that you need to surround yourself with. So if you're feeling that way, go talk to your family.
Your family is what's really going to get you to the next place. I mean,
Yep.
The ignore everybody is like, everything that you're speaking into, I personally just did this, and it's so effing true, LGO, because nobody knows what you're experiencing, what your desires are other than you.
Right.
And if you're not going to fight for yourself and fight for what you want out of your life, nobody else is going to do it. So it's like, ignore everybody and you just got to go do it, because even if you fail, at least you know you tried.
At least you know you tried. And also, if you fail, failure is not finale.
No.
It's fulcrum. Like, you've survived all your best days so far. What have been the biggest lessons you've learned? Have they been from the unbridled successes? No, they've been from the colossal failures. It's where you figured out who you are and what you're made of and what actually really matters to you. It's from the failures. So go forth and fail, figure it out. It's awesome. And by the way, if you're worried about what other people think about you, I will say, and it's my favorite Eleanor Roosevelt quote ever, you would worry much less about what other people thought about you if you realized how seldomly they did. No one's paying that much attention because they're also worried about you watching them fail. So go out, figure it out, fail, learn lessons. It's fulcrum. You figure out who you are. That's where you innovate and you grow and you iterate and you become successful.
Oh my gosh. Such amazing advice for this Friday. And Michelle Larson, they don't see you successful. Haters are everywhere and closer than you think. Yes.
So ignore them. Smiles in the front and knives in the rear. Yep. They're all out there.
They're out there, but the lesson from today is to be you, get after it. LGO, you're just an amazing person. Thank you so much. I'm really excited to see the research and what you're putting out there. I think it's gonna be really helpful for all the corporations and all of us figuring this out. So thank you for your time today.
Thank you so much, Rachel. This is super fun.
Thank you. Everyone, have an amazing, beautiful rest of your February. I'll see you in a few weeks on LinkedIn Live. First week of March, I'll be back.